The community pool was the last place I expected to experience real fear. It was supposed to be the easiest summer job imaginable. Skim leaves, test chemicals, vacuum the bottom, lock the gate, go home. The pay wasn't great, but for a 17-year-old on summer break, it beat flipping burgers. Most nights I worked alone. The pool stayed open until 9 p.m, and after the last swimmers left, I'd spend another hour cleaning before closing everything down. By midnight, the entire facility belonged to me. Just rows of empty lounge chairs, silent diving boards, and thousands of gallons of motionless water. At first, I liked the solitude. Then came the reflection. It happened in July, a humid night with no wind, the kind where every sound carries farther than it should. I was skimming leaves from the deep end while the stadium lights reflected across the water like giant white stars. The pool surface was perfectly smooth, not a ripple anywhere. I leaned over with the skimmer pole and happened to glance down. That's when I noticed something strange. My reflection wasn't moving. At first, I thought the angle was wrong. I shifted my weight. The reflection stayed perfectly still. I froze. The version of me in the water stood upright while I remained bent over. My heart skipped. Slowly, I raised my hand. The reflection didn't. It simply stared upward, watching me. A smile spread across its face. Not my smile, something wider, too wide, the kind of grin you see on someone who knows something you don't. I stumbled backward from the edge. The reflection remained standing at the bottom of the pool, perfectly dry, perfectly still, smiling. The community pool was the last place I expected to experience real fear. It was supposed to be the easiest summer job imaginable. Skim leaves, test chemicals, vacuum the bottom, lock the gate, go home. The pay wasn't great, but for a 17-year-old on summer break, it beat flipping burgers. Most nights I worked alone. The pool stayed open until 9 p.m, and after the last swimmers left, I'd spend another hour cleaning before closing everything down. By midnight, the entire facility belonged to me. Just rows of empty lounge chairs, silent diving boards, and thousands of gallons of motionless water. At first, I liked the solitude. Then came the reflection. It happened in July, a humid night with no wind, the kind where every sound carries farther than it should. I was skimming leaves from the deep end while the stadium lights reflected across the water like giant white stars. The pool surface was perfectly smooth, not a ripple anywhere. I leaned over with the skimmer pole and happened to glance down. That's when I noticed something strange. My reflection wasn't moving. At first, I thought the angle was wrong. I shifted my weight. The reflection stayed perfectly still. I froze. The version of me in the water stood upright while I remained bent over. My heart skipped. Slowly, I raised my hand. The reflection didn't. It simply stared upward, watching me. A smile spread across its face. Not my smile, something wider, too wide, the kind of grin you see on someone who knows something you don't. I stumbled backward from the edge. The reflection remained standing at the bottom of the pool, perfectly dry, perfectly still, smiling. I told myself exhaustion was making me hallucinate. I actually laughed, a nervous, shaky laugh. Then the reflection lifted its hand, slowly, deliberately, and drew one finger across its throat. The gesture was unmistakable, a warning or a promise. Before I could react, every stadium light around the pool flickered once, twice, then darkness swallowed everything. The entire facility went black. My flashlight was in the maintenance shed, 50 yards away. I stood frozen beside the deep end. The only illumination came from moonlight reflecting off the water. Then I heard footsteps, splashing footsteps coming from inside the pool. My chest tightened. Nobody was supposed to be there. I aimed my phone's flashlight towards the deep end. The beam trembled in my hand. The water looked empty, still, silent. Then something moved beneath the surface, fast. A pale shape shot across the bottom of the pool, far too large to be a person. I took a step backward and felt a hand grab my ankle. Not from the water, from behind me, from the concrete deck. A freezing wet hand burst upward through solid concrete and wrapped around my leg. I screamed. The grip tightened instantly. Ice-cold water soaked through my shoe. Another hand emerged, then another. Brave fingers clawed upward as though something beneath the concrete was trying to dig its way out. The first hand yanked hard. I crashed onto my back. My phone flew across the ground. The flashlight beam spun wildly. For a split second, I saw my reflection standing on the bottom, not in the water, on the bottom, looking up at me, smiling, the same impossible grin. It raised both hands. The hands gripping me pulled harder, dragging me across the deck towards the deep end. My fingernails scraped concrete. Every muscle screamed. I kicked wildly and managed to break one grip, then another. The moment I pulled free, the stadium lights exploded back on. Everything vanished. The hands, the reflection, the pale shape beneath the water, gone. I quit the next day. Nobody believed my story. The manager assumed I was trying to avoid finishing the summer. Honestly, I would have thought the same. But there's one thing I never found an explanation for. When I got home that night, my right ankle was covered in bruises shaped exactly like fingerprints, blue-gray, as if someone had grabbed me with tremendous force. And etched into the skin, just above the bruises, was a single line of text, not scratched, not cut, almost like it had been pressed into my flesh from the inside. 3 words: "See you tomorrow." I never returned to that pool, but every summer when I pass it, I glance towards the deep end, and sometimes, on completely still nights, I can see someone standing at the bottom, waiting, perfectly motionless, wearing my face. The summer we got a swimming pool was supposed to be the best summer of my life. I was 11, My younger brother Ethan was 8. For months we'd watched contractors dig a massive hole behind our house, install plumbing, pour concrete, and finally fill the pool with thousands of crystal clear water. The moment it was finished, we practically lived in it. Every day felt like a vacation. Every afternoon was spent swimming, diving, and inventing games. At least until the afternoon we found the drain. It was one of the hottest days of July. The air shimmered above the concrete deck. Cicadas screamed from the trees. Our parents sat beneath an umbrella, drinking iced tea, while Ethan and I played a diving game in the deep end. We'd throw weighted rings into the water and race to retrieve them. The pool was nearly 9 feet deep at its center, deep enough that sunlight faded into a blue-green haze near the bottom. I had just grabbed my 3rd ring when I noticed something strange. The drain cover. It wasn't attached. The heavy plastic grate sat crooked beside the opening. At first I thought it had broken loose. Maybe the installers forgot to tighten it. Curious, I swam closer. The pipe beneath looked impossibly dark, a perfect black circle disappearing into the earth. I hovered above it for a second, then looked inside and froze. There were eyes, looking back at me. Not a reflection, not a trick of the light. Eyes, wide, unblinking, human eyes, staring upward from somewhere deep inside the pipe. My lungs instantly felt too small. The face itself remained hidden by darkness. Only the eyes were visible, watching, waiting. I kicked backwards so hard I nearly dropped the ring. The eyes didn't move, didn't blink, didn't disappear. They simply stared, as though whoever or whatever was inside the pipe had been waiting for someone to look down. I shot toward the surface, bursting from the water, gasping. "Dad!" My voice cracked. My parents looked up immediately. "There's somebody in the drain." "What?" "At the deep end. Someone's down there." The smile vanished from his face when he saw I wasn't joking. He stood up immediately. "Stay out of the water." All 4 of us walked to the deep end edge. Dad leaned over. The drain cover was back in place, perfectly centered, secured, exactly where it should have been. My stomach dropped. "No," I said. "It was open." Dad shook his head. "It couldn't have been." I knew what I'd seen. The cover had been beside the opening. The eyes had been real. Then Ethan grabbed my arm, hard. "What's that?" His voice sounded small, terrified. I followed his finger, and I saw the handprint. Pressed against the inside wall of the pool was a tiny, wet handprint, about the size of a toddler's. The water around it rippled gently. The handprint wasn't on the outside surface. It was beneath the liner, inside the wall itself, as though something existed between the pool and the earth surrounding it. My mother stepped closer. "What is that?" Nobody answered because the handprint moved, slowly, dragging itself along the pool wall, leaving a faint trail behind. The fingers flexed, pressed, released, then slid forward again, like something crawling inside the structure, following the curve of the pool toward the shallow end. Ethan started crying. Dad grabbed the pool net and reached towards it. The instant the pole touched the wall, the handprint vanished. Gone. The water became still again. Dad drained half the pool the next day. The installer came out to inspect everything. No damage, no hidden space, no explanation.
The drain cover was fully secured. Nothing unusual was found. My parents eventually convinced themselves it had been some strange optical illusion, kids imagining things, stress, sunlight, whatever explanation made them feel better. But Ethan and I knew what we saw, because later that night, after everyone went to bed, we looked out the second-floor window toward the backyard. The pool lights were still on, the water glowed pale blue in the darkness, and standing motionless at the bottom of the deep end, visible through the water, was a small child, barefoot, pale, looking up toward our bedroom window, one hand pressed against the glassy pool wall, the same tiny hand, the one that had been crawling through the inside of the pool all afternoon. We never saw its face clearly, but just before the automatic pool lights shut off, the child slowly lifted one finger and pointed toward the drain, as if it wanted us to look inside again. And even now, years later, I still refuse to swim in deep water where I can't see the drain at the bottom, because sometimes when I think about those eyes staring up from the darkness, I wonder if the child was trapped down there, or if it was trying to warn us about something farther inside the pipe.
For years, I swam because it was the only thing that quieted my mind. No phone, no conversations, no distractions, just breathing, stroke, kick, turn, repeat. When I traveled for work, I'd always look for hotels with pools. Most were crowded during the day, so I developed a habit of booking private swim sessions late at night whenever the hotel offered them. That's how I ended up alone in the pool at midnight, and how I almost never came back. The hotel was modern and expensive. The indoor pool occupied an entire glass-walled floor overlooking the city. By midnight, everyone else had gone to bed. The attendant unlocked the gate, checked my reservation, and left me alone. "You've got the pool until 1, she said. Then she disappeared. The facility became silent. The water was perfectly still. The bright ceiling lights reflected off the surface like polished silver. I stretched, adjusted my goggles, and slipped into the water. The temperature was perfect, cool, comfortable, familiar. I started swimming laps. At first, everything felt normal. Freestyle, breathe left, breathe right, count strokes, turn, repeat. Swimming has a hypnotic quality to it. You stop thinking about time. You stop noticing your surroundings. The world shrinks to water and breath. After what felt like 10 minutes, I approached the end of the lane and prepared to flip turn, except the wall wasn't there. My hands struck nothing. I opened my eyes underwater, confused. The lane stretched ahead of me, endless. I surfaced immediately. The far wall was gone. So was the near wall. I spun around. My stomach tightened. The pool wasn't a pool anymore. The lane lines extended into darkness, perfectly straight, vanishing into blackness in both directions. The tiled floor beneath me faded into a deep, featureless abyss. The ladders were gone. The deck was gone. The glass walls, the ceiling, everything. There was only water.
infinite water and darkness. A cold sweat formed beneath my swim cap. I began swimming hard in the direction I thought the edge should be. 10 strokes, 20, 30, nothing. No wall, no floor, no lights, only endless black water stretching forever. My breathing became ragged. Panic started creeping in. I changed direction, swam the other way. Still nothing. The lane lines remained beside me, continuing into infinity, as though the pool had unfolded into something impossible. Minutes passed, or hours, I couldn't tell. My arms began burning, my shoulders ached. The water felt colder, heavier. Every breath seemed harder than the last. Eventually, exhaustion forced me to stop. I treaded water, alone, surrounded by darkness. That's when I felt it. Something touched my foot, softly, barely a brush. I jerked upward immediately. The water beneath me remained black, empty. Then it happened again, this time longer. A smooth surface gliding against my ankle, massive, cold, far larger than any fish, far larger than any person. My pulse exploded. I pulled my legs upward instinctively. The thing continued moving beneath me, silent, effortless, like a submarine passing through deep water, only alive. I started swimming again, not toward anything, just away, desperately. The lane line remained beside me, the only landmark left. Then I noticed something horrifying. The floating markers weren't floating anymore. They were sinking, one by one, disappearing into the darkness below, as though something beneath the water was consuming the lane itself, coming closer. I kicked harder than I ever have in my life. My lungs screamed, my arms felt numb. Then I saw light, tiny at first, a pale rectangle in the distance. I swam toward it. The light grew larger, brighter, closer. Suddenly, my hand struck tile, the pool wall, real, solid. I gasped and pulled myself onto the deck. The indoor pool was exactly as I'd left it. The walls, the ceiling, the ladders, everything normal. The clock on the wall read 12:17 a.m. I'd only been swimming for 17 minutes. The attendant found me sitting on the deck, shaking uncontrollably. She assumed I'd had a panic attack. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe. But as I gathered my things to leave, something caught my eye at the bottom of the deep end. A dark shape, moving, far below the tiles. Not on them, beneath them. As though something enormous existed underneath the pool itself, watching through the floor. The shape slowly turned, and for one impossible moment I saw a single enormous eye open in the darkness. Then it blinked. I've never swum in a hotel pool again, because sometimes when I'm drifting off to sleep, I still feel that smooth, cold surface brushing against my feet. And I remember one detail that didn't occur to me until much later. When the pool became endless, the thing below never once touched me. It simply circled, patiently, the way a shark circles something it knows is already trapped.